welcome to the GEMS podcast, GPOD, the podcast that educates you about all things GEMS and how to make the most of your medical aid. I'm Yuveka Rangappa. In this episode, we are discussing fraud, waste and abuse and their impact on healthcare costs and sustainability, especially in schemes like GEMS. With us today, we have Ishmael Mohapi, GEMS Senior Manager Operations Risk. Say hello.
Hello.
We have with us Nomfundo Dlomo, Head of GEMS Claims Risk Management at Metropolitan Health. Hi there.
Hello.
And GEMS member and Claims Administrator as well. Let's add that as well. And Dr. Gregory Pratt, Head of Claims Risk, also from Metropolitan Health. Welcome. Say hi, Doc.
Hello to you.
All right. So our first question, Ishmael, is for you. And I think we actually need to, in this context, define what is fraud, waste and abuse.
Thank you. And I think it's very important to make a distinction of what fraud, waste and abuse because the manner in which the scheme handles any instances of fraud, waste and abuse is different. So fraud relates to an intentional misrepresentation of facts to the benefit of one, which can lead to the prejudice of another person. So in that respect, it's more has to deal with intention to deceive. Whereas waste and abuse, they are used interchangeably in the sense that they're almost the same, but there's intention that is lacking there. And we have various examples of when waste and abuse happens. It's unnecessary service, sometimes unnecessary hospitalization, unnecessary, dispensing of medication that is not necessary for that specific condition. And in those instances, we deal with that differently from a risk management perspective.
Can you be more specific and give us some juicy details? Give us some examples to explain those things we're talking about. What have people done?
Yeah, so in terms of fraud, we can, the instances that we encounter at GEMS is mainly of collusion. Where a member and a practitioner agree that we're going to submit a claim to GEMS, whereas they're going to share the monies that are going to be received. So that's the most example that we experience. Or in an instances where a practitioner indicate that they have dispensed certain medication to patients, but instead they've given, cosmetic things, milk, and the likes. In more your waste and abuse perspective, maybe you look at a procedure which ideally this procedure could take 3 days in a specific facility. But days are extended to about 7 or 8 days, which is unnecessary lengthy, period of admission. Those are your waste and abuse instances. Yeah.
And this in terms of the difference, and I know you've gone into it in earlier, just a couple of minutes ago, but the difference between actual fraud and waste, if you can just differentiate for us.
So basically it's the intention. Yeah, so one is done for the purpose of deceiving another and in order to make a buck out of it. But waste and abuse, sometimes the practitioner is not even aware that what he's doing is actually unlawful or and wasteful in its shade, or is abusing the scheme benefits. Yeah.
And I suppose then people don't understand what the knock-on effect of this is. And Nomfundo, this is where I want to hear from you. What are the hidden sort of impacts that members actually don't realize that, how fraud, waste and abuse affects their access to healthcare and when they get sick, how this might affect what they need to get out of this?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And it is important. A lot is said and estimated around the financial impact of fraud, waste and abuse. However, it's very difficult to quantify. It's estimated that anything between 15 to 20% of all claims paid by schemes are potentially lost to fraud, waste and abuse. And then over and above that, schemes historically have only been able to claim back and recover about 5% of what's identified as fraud, waste and abuse. Now, the impact on members that they may not be aware of is that it directly affects their contributions. Schemes have to maintain certain solvency and liquidity levels, and to do that, difficult decisions like increasing member contributions might have to be made. Benefits might have to be limited so as not to pay too many claims, and ultimately the member pays, and the member is impacted. A scheme might need to also introduce a co-payment to try and mitigate the loss of the financial impact of fraud, waste, and abuse. Something else that we don't often think about are the intrinsic impacts about trust in the healthcare sector as a whole. So the trust between members and the scheme, the trust between providers and members. If a provider is consistently being flagged as someone who perpetrates fraud, waste, and abuse against medical schemes, the confidence that a member has in consulting and trusting the consultations with those providers is also impacted.
Yeah, that actually makes sense. If somebody is willing to do something wrong for you, I mean, are they actually giving you, what is their moral compass, I suppose is the question we're asking here, right? Exactly. Yeah, well, that's a great, and I think very few people actually think about that. Doc Ishmael mentioned that GEMS' policy is to first attempt to prevent fraud, waste, and abuse, and then remediate. Now, just to tell us how, if fraud, waste, and abuse is actually detected, how do you actually pick it up and prevent it, if you can, before claims are paid?
So yes, we'd love to prevent as much as we can, but to give you some context, in any 1 month, GEMS is paying over 50,000 different practices, and in rand amounts, more than 4 billion rand, and millions of claim lines on a monthly basis. So in that huge claims volume, you are trying to detect what part of that is fraudulent or wasteful or abusive in terms of the utilization of the scheme benefits. So we must use different technologies, different data analytical skills to find where are these anomalies, what looks different, and we try and do this before a pay run. So GEMS will pay claims twice a month, and before those runs, which exceed 2 billion rand in one go, we have limited time to look through these data volumes and identify practices that either have suddenly changed their claiming pattern or are claiming very different to the peers, the similar disciplines that they have in the clinical realm. So we would easily look at, where a practice, according to the historical claims, have suddenly jumped up in a rand value in a claims run, or they're using particular codes that look different to their peers. So, for example, we would find a specialist like an orthopedic surgeon that is using a particular kind of procedure way more than their peers, and costing far more in a cost per event scenario.
It amazes me that they don't think you would notice this.
Yeah, many times they're not quite connected to their claims process because they outsource that to other people. And they don't often see the actual claims that land at medical schemes. But through our in-house analytics, we utilize our business intelligence unit, our actuaries, and then with clinical insight, we identify those claims that we urgently need to look at before those pay runs, and then we take action. In either we say, let's hold these claims and investigate further, and then we look at the broader practice profile to make sure that nothing looks, abnormal.
I mean, if I can ask, do you often get a call going, but why haven't you paid my claim? And when you tell them, but listen, we've noticed this is not very kosher.
Yes.
What's the response? What do they say?
Yes, so normally GEMS will pay claims within days of getting those claims, but we have a right to hold them for 30 days. To give us that time to validate those services and make sure that what is being claimed for was what actually happened at the patient-provider interface. So, many times we would find those irregular codes that are being used and query it with those doctors, and then their billing people were potentially using the code incorrectly or misunderstood. So they would have a chance to go back and correct those claims.
And if it was intentional, what are the excuses you get? The same thing. My person didn't know. My admin person didn't realize. Okay.
Yes, naturally.
It's an admin error. I think maybe also, if I can add on that.
Yes, please.
When you talk about that prevention is better than cure. So one of the things that we've done is that we have what you call health summits, where we go to different provinces, where we educate practitioners around correct billing and also the impact of fraud, waste, and abuse. And additional to that, it's not only concentrated on practitioners, we also look at members, where we have GEMS days and where we educate members around the country, around the impact of fraud, waste, and abuse, as Nomfundo has indicated, because that if you continue with skimming and colluding with practitioners, you are basically affecting your benefits at the end of the day because of benefits.
And you could be robbing yourself, your family member, or somebody who's going to need that treatment quite urgently, and then there's not going to be enough. So tell me some more now. You've already teased me with some juicy stories, and I want to know from you, Ishmael and Nomfundo. I mean, tell us about some of the cases that you have actually investigated where GEMS identified fraud, waste, and abuse practices after claims had already been paid. And then what do you do after that? How do you approach those cases?
So maybe if I can start first. I mean, we have challenges in the sense that newly qualified students, because of the current situation in our country where this employment. So what happens is that they get duped and enticed into joining old practices who have been in the game for long and who've been defrauding GEMS for a very long time, and GEMS have taken action against them. Now, in order to do that, for them to open new doors, they recruit these newly qualified individuals and make them register practices, and they submit practices in their own names. And as a result, some of these practitioners are aware of what they're getting into, some don't. But claims continues to be submitted to an extent that it affects, and they have obviously what we call runners or touts who recruit members into this type of schemes and say,
it's scary.
Yes, claims are going to be submitted using your details. You're going to get 40% of the claims. As Dr. Pratt has indicated, I mean, we pay about 2 billion in a claims run. So every Tuesday, monies are paid into people's accounts by these practitioners. Those are cases that currently we have established and we've opened criminal cases against. So, but yeah.
But you get your money back eventually.
Unfortunately,
after you've paid this claim.
You can't reverse it. It's already there, but remember, and by the time when you institute civil action, which sometimes take long, the money is already being used. And you cannot do much recoveries. Our recovery rate is quite low, but
Nomfundo, you look like you really want to share some stories. Tell me.
No, listening to Ishmael, I definitely do agree that the economic conditions within the country and the desperation around employment is definitely being exploited. What we've also identified is that people who aren't even healthcare providers are exploiting the workings of a medical scheme. So against the context that Dr. Pratt highlighted, schemes will not be able to individually assess every single claim. And because of the volumes that come in, the business model is to just pay claims in good faith. And unless they are flagged by our claiming rules or our analytical systems, if it looks correct and accurate on the face of it, it will get paid. Something else that we've identified is that nefarious third parties are setting up legitimate recruitment pages on LinkedIn and are spoofing legitimate government adverts for healthcare providers who are looking for employment within government. So now, if someone is looking for a job within government, it's not likely that they will also then register a practice number. And what these people are doing is that they're using the personal information of legitimate healthcare providers who apply for these jobs to register practice numbers in their names and then to defraud the schemes, almost as a form of identity theft.
Wow. So what happens once you've identified a doctor or a practitioner, let's call it that, and it's not always just a doctor, it could be pharmacist, it could be dentist, whoever it is. What happens, what action can you actually take against them? Other than, yes, you spoke about charges, Ishmael, you spoke about that. How far has it gone? Have you gotten people sort of, canned, that's it, you're not a doctor anymore?
Yeah. So GEMS operates in terms of a fraud, waste and abuse policy and remedial guide, which guides in terms of the actions that we can take. As I've indicated, we can institute criminal action against the offenders. We report them to their registration authority or regulatory bodies, be it HPCSA or Pharmacy Council. And also we institute civil litigation, in order to recover members' money. And unfortunately, in terms of the Act, our powers in terms of limitations, in terms of maybe stopping them into the systems, they are quite limited in the sense that Section 59 says you can either pay the provider or a member, but you have to pay someone. So in our instance, we do what we call termination of direct payments, where the trust relationship has been broken because we pay claims on good faith. In that instance, we rather prefer that members consult and request refunds from the scheme, which will go into an additional validation. But
And a question that any one of you can answer is about, does it have to be, is there a first chance, second chance, third chance, then you find the repeat offenders? Do we do that, or do we just go for them in the first time we notice something is wrong?
I think it depends on what the findings are on in any individual case. Because if you found, really intentional fraud, then you're not going to give that guy a second chance. But where you found that they've made errors, used wrong codes, misunderstood coding or how to formulate accounts, of course, we're going to say, let's give you another chance. Let's educate you and help you to claim properly and to match your claims correctly with the services that were rendered. And yes, if you've been overpaid, monies that you shouldn't have gotten, those can be recovered back to the scheme. But definitely you will get, further chances to rehabilitate your practice.
So at what point do you decide or realize, when does that red flag go up for you that this is not just a mistake anymore, that this is actually being done intentionally? Are you able to tell?
Yeah, so it goes back to the definition that Ishmael shared at the top of this podcast. It's the intentionality. There are a myriad of typologies that fall into what is possible as fraud within the space.
Patterns?
And there's patterns, known patterns. And then waste and abuse, as rightfully pointed out by Dr. Pratt, can legitimately be ignorance of the appropriate and expected billing practices. Since Section 59, GEMS really has taken a look at our processes and have onboarded that reality, that someone might not intend to defraud the scheme. And there we will apply progressive remediation based on the findings. Everything is on a case-by-case basis in cognizance of, what we've identified, the realities of the practice, and our responsibility to educate people on the appropriate billing practices expected from the scheme. But where there's fraud, there's a zero tolerance approach.
You see it. It's foolproof, the system. You see it. You find it. And if this is a question that you actually can answer, what happens when you find that there's one of your members, one of the patients who's colluding? What's done with them?
Yeah. So in that instance, I mean, we can terminate the membership, and we have done that.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see. I think there's also media articles where you would have established that some members who have defrauded the scheme, there's been criminal charges laid against them, and we terminated their membership. So and we have taken such drastic steps. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just the practitioner who gets the chop; the patient can as well. Okay, I'd like just some takeaways, key takeaways from each one of you. Maybe a last point about fraud, waste, and abuse, and what you'd like those who are watching and listening today to actually know. You can start, Ishmael.
Yeah. Mine is just protect what is yours. The scheme belongs to the members, and they need to protect it and make sure that they protect their details, they protect their medical aid cards, and whenever they receive those statements or claim statement, they need to study them and make sure that anything that is on the claim statement is correct and accurate. Yeah.
Okay. Mfundo?
Yes, no, that's a very important message shared by Ishmael about the call to action for members. A lot of what we uncover comes from whistleblowing, but not just from the members. I would also encourage service providers who don't perpetrate fraud, waste, and abuse and want to maintain the integrity of the healthcare system as a whole to also hold their colleagues accountable. If they are aware of something, use the channels through the whistleblowing hotline and other ways to report and help to protect the benefits that are there.
And Doc?
I think a key aspect is that our analytical capabilities are continually being increased, enhanced, to make sure that we can find even more of this of these anomalies within our claim system, because it's vital for us to protect the resources of the scheme so that it can serve those members it was intended to serve, and those funds will be available to those members who pay their premiums every month in their time of need, in future. So they must, as Ishmael says, protect those benefits and be a partner to GEMS in the way they source healthcare and what kind of relationships they have with those practitioners.
All right, great stuff. Nomfundo, Ishmael, Dr. Pratt, thanks very much for sharing. If you think they don't know, they do know. And if you think that you can pull the wool over their eyes, you can only pull it so far. As you heard, they will find you out. Now, if you suspect fraudulent activity, please contact GEMS via their anonymous 24-hour toll-free GEMS Fraud, Waste and Abuse hotline. That number, 0800 212 202. That's 0800 212 202. If you have access to email, gems@thehotline.co.za, or simply just SMS 30916. Join us again for the next episode of GPOD. Bye-bye for now.